Welcome to The Real Life Buyer. In this podcast, you will discover interviews with procurement and technical experts, business owners, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. These experts will help you to develop and grow, accelerate your career, improve your business, save money, and buy smart. Now introducing The Real Life Buyer, Dave Barr.
Hello and welcome to The Real Life Buyer. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Adam Strong. Adam became a full-time business results strategist in August 2005. He then became the founder of the Game Changers Global in September 18, and then launched the Game Changers Experience podcast in June 2020. He's also authored a number of books, including Play the Game, How to Win in Today's Changing Environment. And that was released in October 21. He's also an established keynote speaker, entrepreneur, and elite athlete, having no less than Sir Mo Farah as his former training partner. Now, today's world has been beset by conflict and huge change, leading to supply chain disruption, rapidly escalating costs, and surging inflation. So it's never been more difficult for business to succeed. So I want to draw upon Adam's experience to help my listeners adapt, pivot, survive, and hopefully thrive. So without any further ado, I welcome Adam onto the podcast. Hi, Adam.
How you doing, Dave? Thanks very much for inviting me on. And hey, you're doing a great job. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to have you on. I do appreciate your time. So let's start finding a little bit more about Adam Strong. You've got a pretty incredible list of achievements that I've just meandered through a few just there. So I'm intrigued to understand the kind of events and drivers that motivated you to continually achieve and deliver. Perhaps you can elaborate more on this.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I guess kind of my first taste of entrepreneurship started at the age of 11. I suppose I kind of hit my midlife crisis very early on in age, I guess. And my childhood wasn't particularly great, unfortunately. I'd actually lost my hair through alopecia, which is a common form of hair loss. It was kind of very much misunderstood back 30 years ago, because really there was a lack of knowledge, should we say, around the illness and stuff. But so, that had affected my confidence greatly, got bullied in school and so forth. And so, when I was a kid, I was very introverted, low in confidence, didn't particularly have a huge amount of friends. And my parents are separated when I was extremely young. So I didn't really have that father figure around me. So, it was tough growing up. But interestingly enough, my mum, who was a single mum and had been for quite some time, we lived off the state for numerous years. My mum never worked in her life, bless her, but she done her best to try and look after us. And so we lived off the state, didn't have a huge amount of wealth that went around. And so one of the things that I did when I was young, at the age of 11, is, interestingly enough, I was just kind of like mirandering around, I suppose, not far from where I was living at the time. And I don't know what happened, but I started seeing all these golf balls appearing in the local ravine and some of the kind of tributaries and the rivers. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. Now, not realizing that actually at the time there was a golf course not so far away. And so next day I came up with this idea of, okay, well, what if I could collect these golf balls and and it was just I was going to collect the golf balls as a hobby initially. But actually, as I started wandering around the back of the fairway, I'd have golfers run over to me thinking, holy crap, I don't want to hit this young boy in the head with a golf ball. So this is, and then they'd ask me a question. They'd like, so what is it that you've got in your bucket? And I'm like, well, I find lost golf balls. That's what I do. And so they're like, oh, that's interesting. Well, listen, we don't have that many balls and we've got like a number of holes to get to the end. And it'll be a bit embarrassing if I'd run out of balls. I don't want this guy to beat me. So, and I'd pick up all sorts of golf balls, right? And then this is how I ended up getting into learning sales and negotiation very, very young. And so they'd offer me sort of a price. And I knew for a fact that some of the bigger price ones, the ones with carry the big brands, really good condition ones, they're the ones that would carry the higher prices. So they might offer me, say, £3 or £4 or whatever it is. And I'd be like, well, I know for a fact that this golf ball, you would have to spend around 12 quid brand new in the shop. So how about we settle on 6 and we'd shake hands, and then they would walk away with a smile on their faces. They thought that they were getting almost a brand spanking new ball for practically half price or more. And I had a big smile on my face, because guess what? When I walked home for the first time and I turned up at home, my mum, she was like, where did you get all this money from? It's like kind of this interrogation. Told her about the story. And like, obviously she was extremely proud of me. But then every time that I went back every weekend, I'd give her a contribution towards, sort of bread, milk and essentials, because sometimes we just didn't have the funds to do it. So that is where I'd really learned about entrepreneurship. That's where I really first got the taste of it.
That's a lovely story. It just shows that, the respect you had for your mum to go back and help her out in that respect. So hats off to you there. Lovely
Appreciate
story.
It. Thank you.
So as I mentioned in the introduction, both business and the individual now has been battered by recent events. So drawing upon your experience, can you share with us some of your knowledge on how to maximize one's energy and achieve a kind of efficient time management in our lives and deal with this situation that we're facing at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think from my perspective, it's not about how you manage your time. It's about actually how you manage your energy. So I'm a big fan of energy management. Now, generally, it doesn't matter what task or what activity that you're doing on a day-to-day basis, it requires an element of energy. And so what I found from experience and from research is that there are generally 4 types of energy but generally most people associate energy in the physical form of energy, okay, which is generally related to productivity and how well you work within your business, right? I get that. But actually there are more than just the one. So let's get into these 4 forms of energy and how you can kind of double down on them. First of all, you've got what we call mental energy. Okay, so that's kind of thinking about, I suppose, clarity, and brain fog is very much associated with mental energy. So if you are low in mental energy, generally it's because you've got low brain fog, you're generally very confused, everything seems a bit fuzzy and dizzy. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Dave, but I have. And so the more mental energy that you have, the more clarity that you have, and the more of a strategy and strategic kind of ideology around that. So that's the first thing. Second thing is emotional energy. So it's about understanding and the understanding of self-awareness. So questions that you need to ask yourself in the morning, first thing in the morning, you can use a gratitude journal if you wish to do so. I do, but you don't have to do that. But some of the questions that you might ask yourself is, how am I feeling today? Right? It might be like, as an example, in terms of like, how am I feeling today? Why do I feel that way? Right? What is it? If I was to use, say, an energy scale between 1 and 10, 1 being I'm absolutely exhausted, like 0 energy, whereas a 10 means I'm running on all cylinders. Where would you rate yourself between 0 and 10? And I always say to people, you're not allowed to use a 7. Okay. All right. And because everyone chooses 7, right? So it's important to pick a number and then decide and ask yourself, why did I choose that number? Right. So if you chose a 6, for example, well, why did you just choose a 6? What was the justification? What's the reason why you feel the way you do? Okay. And so, if it was a 6, and what will happen? And again, another good question is, if I'm at a 6 right now, I'm at 6 today, right? What do I need to do to make it an 8 or a 9? Or what do I need to do to make those slight marginal gains on improvements? So that's pretty important. Now, the third form of energy is spiritual energy. Now, you're probably thinking, spiritual energy, and isn't that kind of that woo-woo kind of stuff, right? That's kind of like what people think, right? Spiritual energy in terms of religion and that kind of stuff. But actually, it's not. Spiritual energy is about things like, for example, do you practice affirmations? So I'm a big believer. I never used to believe in this because I thought it was woo-woo. And now, if you've ever read or watched The Secret, it's a really good example of spiritual energy. But it's about understanding the power of the universe. And again, without getting kind of too woo-woo, but in reality, I'm a big believer that actually, you can set up intentionally the way that you drive success, okay? And you can do that by, for example, reading. I have 10 affirmations that I have created myself, that I read to myself, okay? That I read to myself on a daily basis. Okay. And it's one of my rituals that I effectively follow on a day-to-day basis. Okay. So that's what it's kind of like: manifestations, the universe, affirmations, those types of things. What are you doing to nurture your spiritual energy? And then the last one, as we discussed, is physical energy. So what can we do to improve our physical energy? And that's generally related to, as I mentioned to you, productivity. So when I think about energy, we think about, okay, so what's going to actually increase my physical energy? Well, the hormones related to physical energy is generally serotonin and dopamine, but also endorphins. What are they? What is that generally related to? It could be related to, for example, physical exercise, right? It could be just to make sure that you're doing your 10,000 steps a day. That, to me, gets me really pumped up in terms of energy, right? So I want to really kind of think about like some of the things that really increase your energy, whether it is the people that you surround yourself with, your environment. And my belief is, and my good friend of mine, and he was my very first mentor, one of my very first mentors, Daniel Priestley, he talks about, and a statement I really agree with him, is that your environment dictates your performance. So if you're not in a happy place, whether it be your home, in a relationship, or whatever it is, if you're generally not in a happy place, that's going to affect all of the 4 elements of your energy. And that's kind of my take on stuff. So I hope that kind of helps.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And the fact you touched on those, I'm quite pleased. I can tick a few boxes there. The journaling thing I kind of struggle with. I've tried and failed dismally at that. But doing the 10,000 steps, actually, that if it's sunny outside at lunchtime, doing that lunchtime walk, if you can get there, doing some exercise in the morning when you first wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, into that. As you say, the books you read, the podcasts you listen to, make a huge difference.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you've got the same kind of, should we say, belief in affirmations. I have this little ritual I go through just before I go to bed, and I say the same kind of things over and over in my head. I've got Post-it notes up on the mirror, and just taking some time just to smile at yourself and celebrate those perhaps small successes each day, I think make a huge difference to yourself and perhaps those around you. And I love the bit you say about what you surround yourself by, because if you surround yourself by negative people, then what's going to be the result? So absolutely brilliant. So it's really for the clarification you gave on those 4 key areas of energy. So thanks for that. And I think that's a great one to share. So let's move on a bit. At the moment, I think there's quite a lot of intensity in the world, and there's quite a lot of overwhelm. People are really struggling with all these things hitting them at the same time. And so I'm trying to figure out what the best tips and techniques to help us create a better, as we say, mental strength, particularly, so we can keep to performing at our best when we're getting battered by these things in our head. Now, you've probably got a vast library of experiences, and you can probably share some of those on how we could pick the most pertinent things to use and apply every day. Have you got some pearls of wisdom that you can share, some examples that you can share where this really does resonate?
Yeah, and I think from my perspective, and listen, I absolutely agree with you. People may feel like they're being battered, with COVID that's happened, and with everything that's going on in the world. But I think from my perspective, and I think this is extremely important, is to write down the things that is costing you time. And normally, generally, that includes the media, right? So the media plays a very important part of not just affecting our mindsets, but also the way that we maybe have, it affects us in many different ways. So it can affect us emotionally. Again, goes back to energy, right? It can affect us mentally, because it can affect us from an energy standpoint, right? But from my perspective, one of the things that I would always talk about is talking about the things that you can and can't control. So I have a few clients actually that are complete control freaks, right? And the big problem with that, okay, so they get extremely stressed and agitated about the fact that they can't control what's going on in the world. And the reality is that if you are one of those guys listening in right now and thinking to yourself, you know what, I'm that person. What can you do for me? It's not about what I can do for you. It's about what you can do for yourself. And one of the things to deal with that situation is to write down the things, or write down the activities of the things that you can't control, okay? And write down the things that you can control, because you can't deal with what's going on in the world. You can't deal with how people are feeling. You can't deal with what's published in the news or, what's happening around. You can't control those things. So the best thing that you can do, and I know that sounds really stupid, but actually it's really super simple. Often those things are used as distractions. Now, the big problem with when you have lots of distractions that's going on in the world, what that causes you to become disfocused. And so when you're disfocused, it means that generally you're not focusing on things like self-care or self-harm, self-help type of things. You tend to sacrifice certain healthy habits because everything else becomes a distraction and you become a little bit like you're all over the place type of thing. So that's the first thing, is to write down all of the things that distract you in your life. Now, guess what? I'm not a relationship coach, by the way. I just wanted to tell you this, right? But it even could be, bless them, it could be a spouse and wife or whatever it is. And if they're creating negativity and that makes you unhappy, okay, then guess what? You need to then make a decision on, again, surrounding yourself with who you become, okay? You can't choose your family, you can choose your friends type of thing. But limit, and I know this is going to sound really maybe kind of a bit strange, but try to limit your time around those people, okay? And surround yourself with people that's going to take you to where you want to go, okay? So that's the first thing. Secondly, which I think is, again, a really great focal point, is to make sure you've got a plan. I've had so many conversations, Dave, with people that don't have a strategy or a plan in place. They just literally wake up, right? Okay, without really any particular strategy. They're a bit all over the place. They're what I call a busy mess, Dave. Yeah. Okay. And I'm sure that some of your listeners will probably be nodding their head right now thinking, oh, that's me, right? That is me. And the big problem with those types of people, and you'll get generally two types of people, right, Dave? You'll get people that are very logical, very more analytical potentially, or action orientated. And then you'll get what we call the creative minds, or the types of people that like to see themselves as kind of doing a bit of everything, right? So they're the types of people that got shiny penny syndrome. And again, find it very difficult to focus. So one of the, in fact, I've had many clients that have had both analogies, okay? With regards to shiny penny syndrome, is to just to focus on one particular project, right? And do well at it. Because what you'll find is with those creative minds is that they're managing 10 different projects at once. But guess what? You've only got so much time in the day and so much energy you have per day. All it causes is stress and overwhelm. So the best thing to do is to jump on a project that's going to help you drive your business forward, drive you and make you more happy, help give value and help people more. Focus on that project, all right? And do well at it. Okay, so that's the second thing. The third thing, which I think is extremely important, and again, some of the listeners are probably going to be laughing about this, is stop trying to be perfect. Okay, stop waiting for the perfect time. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for the market to stabilize. Stop waiting for. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not being funny. You could be waiting a long time for all of those things to happen. Okay, the reality is that no time in the world is going to be perfect. Nothing in terms of excuses or all the things that you're trying to come up with, or all the things that you're trying to talk yourself out of right now. I can guarantee you right now, you are doing yourselves injustice. Okay. A really good example of this is I've got a client of mine, and I'm not going to name him because he might be listening, but he'll know who I'm talking about, right? So good friend of mine, great copywriter, got 25 years of industry in the advertising industry, worked for some of the big reputable firms in corporate London, and wants to create a course, right, for entrepreneurs, okay? So he's been harping on about this course for probably the best part of about a year now, right? And I just said to him, and I'm like, when are you actually going to get this course done? Like, you've been harping on about it for the last year. But this and that. And I'm like, dude, seriously, like, I want you to imagine that you've got paying clients that are paid for what you offer, and they're waiting for you to deliver on their product. And honestly, it hit him in the face, right? Like an egg. And it's like, whoa, it's kind of like this big reality check, right? So, and some of the things that come off the back of that, of course, over the last year, which is becoming more self-aware, understanding your fears, imposter syndrome that keeps coming in as well and keeps creeping back. Mindset is such an important part of this, and I think it's so important to continue to condition your mindset, because that's what I like to call it, as a conditioning, really, more than anything else. Conditioning that mindset, make sure it's sharp, make sure it's clear, but also feeding it the same way that you feed your body, feeding it with the right nutrition. Okay, so as you mentioned, whether it be listening to podcasts, whether it be meditation, whether it be reading a book, what are you doing to improve your self-development and self-growth? Because if you're not doing those things, you're doing yourselves injustice. And so many people are so bogged down right now thinking, I need to work. And there's really another great example of this, actually. I met a chap in London a couple of weeks ago, super intelligent, like super smart guy in IT. And one of the things that I found from this conversation is there's so much that's coming off the back of this. It's unbelievable. But effectively, he'll use excuses. He'll use people to blame. So he'll use the staff to blame, where he's at right now. But he's working in the business operationally. And the big sacrifice to that is that his health is sacrificed. He's working, 60 plus hours a week. He's created himself a job. He's becoming dispassionate. He's becoming unhappy. If you want those things in your life, then you need to make some different choices. That's the bottom line. And again, what I found from experience is having someone to point that out and call your BS. Okay, because if you're that type of person listening and you think, do you know what, I need this guy in my life. Okay, I'm happy to spend some questions with you. So that's all good. Anyway, I hope that kind of helps, Dave.
Yeah, that's right. There's a hell of a lot of good points in there. I love the clearing the clutter and things like that, and the distractions. It's so easy to be distracted now. I've got to admit, I can be a little bit of a magpie myself. The shiny pennies come up, and sometimes you can find yourself reading 2 or 3 books at a time and hopping between them and not focusing on them. So, I love those points you made there, and the mention of the media. I certainly see, the news is full of negativity. Very few good news stories. It's always, dragging people down. So there's lots in there. Thanks for that. Just moving on slightly, and you touched on the media, so I'll carry on that theme a little bit. So obviously, right now I'm in supply chain, and supply chain professionals and business owners are obviously dealing with price hikes, dealing with supply availability challenges, and obviously many of these things have been foisted upon them on a daily basis. We're all receiving these letters through the post or email saying, sorry, guys, you could have a price increase because of X, Y, Z and blah, blah, blah. And that's, again, reinforced by the media because of what they're saying to everybody. Oh, prices are going up and petrol's doing this and so on and so forth. And people are almost kind of accepting their fate and applying their own self-limiting beliefs. Oh, what can I do about it? Look at the state of the world. It's out of my hands kind of thing. So I'm intrigued to see if you've got some ideas on how you could smash through those beliefs and sort of give us the drive and determination to negotiate and take some action and perhaps sidestep and change the way you're doing things to deal with all those things that being bombarded by at the moment that stop us from tackling and addressing these issues head on.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I'll quickly share you a quick story actually, and so really interesting point here. I don't know if you knew of the company Zappos, which was the online shoe retailer. Do you remember the online shoe retailer Zappos?
Does ring a faint bell, but yeah, please go on.
So basically, the former CEO of the company, his name is Tiny Heisen, spelled H-S-E-I-H, I think. And he wrote a book called The Book of Happiness, I think it was. But anyway, cut long story short, Tony's background is that he sold his software company to Microsoft for a ridiculous amount of money. And so he could have basically retired for the rest of his life and lived on a beach, but decided to go into the e-commerce world and launch a business called Zappos. Now, it wasn't originally called Zappos originally, but he renamed it. And so if you can imagine how many websites and how many companies are selling shoes, you're thinking to yourself, that's a bit of an ask, right? So and this is in the United States. So you can imagine how many competitors there are. And, so one of the things that Tony wanted to focus on, and very, very much applicable to today's world and can be, is that he needed to create a competitive edge in the marketplace. Now, what his philosophy is that he wanted to create a culture based on happiness. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, so how does that translate into revenue and profits? Let's get cut to the chase here, Adam. Well, the reality is that Tony effectively, what he wanted to do is he felt that he needed to ultimately really invest in the people of the business. So that was his staff and his team, okay? And some of the things that he did is that during the recruitment process, he would give someone $2,000 to quit within the kind of, the 3 months trial, effectively, okay? Because he wanted to attract the right people based on their values and if it was congruent with the company, okay? So I think it was only about, out of all the applicants over the number of years, I think only 2% had actually took the money and run. And obviously that was great for them because they saved a huge amount of money on training, right? So they wanted to attract the right types of people. And so he wanted to create this culture of happiness. Now, he knew that if he made his staff and his team happy, okay, how could that then translate in creating happy customers? Now, I'll get to my point now. Now, if I've got happy staff and I create happy customers, that's going to lead to happy shareholders, right? Because they're going to get bigger dividends on their returns, right? So what did he do for customers? Well, if you bought a pair of shoes from Zappos, right, he would actually, his initiative was he wanted to create a wow experience, right? He needed to create that competitive. He needed to create customer loyalty. And how he did that was very, very simple. There were three pledges that they had within the Zappos experience. First of all, every time that you'd order a pair of shoes, you'd get a pair of free flip-flops with every order, completely free. So that was the first thing. Secondly, they'd offer a money-back guarantee. Now, within that, no one in the marketplace at the time was offering a 14-day money-back guarantee. They never was. And the third thing is obviously postage can be extremely expensive. You could order a pair of shoes. If they didn't fit, you didn't like them or whatever it is, you can send them back free of charge. So those were some of the things that he created as to create that kind of edge in the marketplace. So going back to your question, okay, it's not about price that you need to think about. Okay. Yes, some cultures, some people are price sensitive, but it's going back to understanding who your clients are. Now, if you've delivered great service in the past and you've delivered what you say that you promise effectively, okay, then there's no reasons why people would jump ship. However, what you've got to assume is that people may jump ship. And normally the biggest reasons why people jump ship is generally because of price. Okay, that's the bottom line, Dave, right? So think about this. During over the last couple of years, airlines have really suffered, right? That's probably one industry that's really taken a bit of a hammering, okay? Now, I do a lot of travel, Dave, you'll know that. And so I'll use this as an example, right? So generally, I travel between Scandinavia and the UK quite often, okay? And generally, there are about 3, if not 4 airlines that fly to my destination, okay? Now, there was one particular airline that went above and beyond what was expected of me, right? All the other airlines were increasing their fares because obviously they need to make up numbers. All the other airlines were just literally letting customers board with zero interaction, asking people how their day was. They were not even giving out tea and coffee. Hey, it was even difficult to even get a glass of water. That's how bad it was, okay? So, but British Airways, and I use this, British Airways, okay? By the way, I'm not being paid for this sponsorship, just wanted to let you know for full disclosure. British Airways, however, had a very different approach. So not only did they keep their prices low, okay, what they wanted to do is they wanted to create memory so that when better times are ahead of them, customers will then think about them first overpriced. So what did they do? When I boarded the airplane to go fly or whatever it might be, they'd always ask me how my day is. Okay, so customer service, top number one. Number two, when the airplane was up in the air, they'd come around with a bag of crisps, drink, and a biscuit. Like something very simple like that, right? It cost them less than a quid, right? But it was something like that which really helped them to create that kind of experience. They wanted to be different, okay? And number three, they'd always turn around. They'd never expect anything in return. They'd always send out a survey and ask you for your flying experience. Now, that to me was completely different to how all the other airlines were behaving in the marketplace. And that's another example of how you effectively can create that different edge in the marketplace. So I want you to really think about, and this goes back to your listeners, is that it's not about thinking about just price, but it doesn't matter what business you're in, e-commerce, selling IT products or whatever it is. Even if you're selling products on Amazon right now, okay, what is it that you can do? Even if you're selling Pilates mats or, I don't know, yoga products or whatever it might be, what is it that you can do to effectively create a little a wow experience? But how can you create that, should we say, sharp eye from a customer's perspective? Let me give an example. If you're selling products on Amazon, say you were selling, I don't know, call it yoga mat, right? Because yoga mats are easy, right? Now, how many yoga mats are on Amazon, Dave? Just out of curiosity.
Ages, I should think. My wife's got a few.
Right, exactly. So there's millions of them, right? Loads of sellers are selling yoga mats, right? And they're all competing on one thing: price. That's what they're competing on, right? It doesn't matter if it's organic and it's got so and so. There's probably going to be a few quid here and there in between. There's not going to be a lot. But what's going to create those extra social, those reviews and testimonials? What's going to create that kind of like enhancement to the edge of the market? Well, first of all, what if I sold you a yoga mat, Dave? If you're in the market for buying one, if I sold you a yoga mat, okay, I gave it to you for the same price as our competitors. However, what I'm going to do for you, Dave, is I'm going to give you a series of different videos which will give you some exercises that will help you improve your posture and will improve your balance and coordination and stuff like that. On top of that, Dave, I'm going to give you an instruction manual and a workbook so that you can work to it. I'm also going to give you some free audio stuff as well to go along with it. So I'm going to give you 3 big bonuses as part of that. And it's at no extra cost to me. Does it cost me much money? No, because it's an information product. It didn't cost me much money initially to create, but I can just roll it out on a day-to-day basis to it. So do you think, what would you choose, Dave, if you had just a yoga mat online selling it for $14.99 or whatever it is, or you have my yoga mat selling the same price with all the bonuses? What would you go for?
That's a no-brainer, isn't it? You go for the enhanced benefits, and that feels like the personal touch, doesn't it?
Exactly. So, it is a no-brainer, but so many people overlook those things. Remember, it doesn't matter the cost of something, unless you're like super price sensitive, but maybe the clients that you're attracting are the wrong types of clients. People love to buy value. That's what people love, right? People love the bonuses. People love to feel looked after. People love to, if you're giving them and showing them how you can make their life easier, then guess what? That's got to be a thumbs up and worth any money on the day.
Yeah, no, that's superb. Yeah, I love the fact that there's a care and consideration from this individual for his staff. That can be a little bit lacking, shall we say, at the moment. People are a little bit discontent. You say you get that loyalty. If they're happy, they want to serve the customers. They've got the right attitude. The kind of the Virgin type of touch, shall I say? When I used to be flying, obviously, and I used to fly with them, so I can understand that. And I love the personal elements for the individual to make them feel like they are cared for. They're just not a consumer handing over cash and that's the end of it. I love the fact with some Amazon retailers you get a follow-up with, it's just an email, a thank you card, or whatever the case may be. As you say, those things make the difference and they make you notice things. I've interviewed Steve Sims in the past, and to keep the rapport with people he knows, he sends simple things like some stationery from a a hotel to that person, say, I'm in so and so, just thinking of you, have a look at this, or whatever the case may be. But it's always adding that little bit extra connection that really is minimal cost, if anything at all. So I love that, and I think that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing those great stories there. Now, one of the things I've picked up on when I'm trawling through and finding out all these different things about yourself, I found quite interesting to know a little bit more about, I'm sure other people would love to hear this, is you have a Business Accelerator Challenge. It's certainly been on your website. Can you share what that is, and what's obviously the key purposes, and what's the plans for it, and what do people actually get out of that? What's the benefit of joining?
Yeah, the Business Accelerator Challenge was a challenge that we did. When was it? This year, believe it or not. It was a 5-day challenge, and the main goal of it really was to help people become more visible. So hey, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to deny it, but we're all there's a lot of talk about potentially a recession knocking on people's door right now, okay? And so there's a couple of things that you've really got to think about. People buy from people that they like, know, and trust. It's not your product, it's not your service. People don't care about any of that crap. They care about the person. And if you feel like they're being looked after and they feel helped. So visibility is going to be crucial. It's going to be it's not like, and visibility is not like, if you're the type of person that puts out content or maybe gets visible, if you want someone to, I don't know, if you become a #1 bestseller in a certain category, for example, and you just go all mad for about 2 weeks and then you die down, right? That's not going to work. What I'm saying to you is that being visible is about being consistent. And a lot of people are inconsistent with the way that they connect with their audience. And in this day and age, human connection is so crucially important. Like, it's so important, it's unbelievable. Because if what they're looking for right now, a lot of your buyers and so forth, they're looking for someone that's a little bit different in the marketplace. Trust is the #1 currency of today, but effectively, in order to build trust, you have to have a number of elements. #1 is you've got to have authority in the marketplace, right? #2, you've got a credibility. Credibility comes in many different forms, whether it be through testimonial or social proof. You say who you say you are online, etc. And then that relates to the visibility that you have online, and that can be done through writing articles, white papers, whatever it might be. It could be podcasting like we're doing right now. That completely depends. So that's super important. But the Business Accelerator Challenge was basically for people that are interested in learning how can they enhance their visibility over, 5, if not 10 days. And I give people a framework based on that. So we use, digital summits effectively as a way to drive lots of leads, attract lots of attention, get lots of noise going, create lots of great energy as well. So that's what I'm teaching a lot of clients to do at the moment. And that's what the challenge is based around. And next week, actually, we're going to be doing a masterclass where I step-by-step guide people through a framework that we have created that I have I've made so many mistakes over the last couple of years, Dave, you wouldn't even believe. And so what I've done is, through this, effectively given people a bit of a shortcut to success and giving people kind of a framework which they could potentially use in their own businesses, that they can effectively help to create that visibility, to help create that lead generation, build brand, and so forth. So I hope that kind of helps.
That's brilliant. Yeah, because I think it was right about March of this year that that was out and about. Are you planning to have more cohorts join the this opportunity later on, or what's the future plans for this?
Yeah, so the plans is that so next week will depend on when this episode is going to air, of course. Yeah. We've got we've got a masterclass on July the 5th of 2022. If you're interested, feel free to message me, drop a message or whatever. It's a free masterclass. But what we're also doing right now is, one of the things that we're doing right now is I'm getting a lot of inquiries about people that are in need of accountability. Super important in business, as you know, in need of focus, but importance of understanding human connection and collaboration. So those are the things that you kind of need. But for me, I'm all about my main I suppose, specialism is all around business strategy and business growth. That's what I love. That's what I love and breathe, and understanding your purpose, getting some clarity, because there's a lot of confused business owners out there. I don't care if you're in e-commerce, if you're running a coaching company, I don't care who you are. Generally, the key is that the more crystal clear clarity you have, the more big wins that you go, and the faster you go in terms of growth. So we're actually at the moment, in terms of cohorts, you mentioned around cohort, we're actually building a new program right now. Well, we've been running it for the last couple of years, but we're now we've got what we call the Game Changers Inner Circle, which is effectively a VIP invitation only. It's a private members club where people have to apply. They jump on a call with one of our team, and we find out a little bit more about them, because what's important to us is relationships. But secondly, is to help them to create a blueprint strategy for business growth. That's what we want them to do. And then we help facilitate and give them the tools and resources needed to do that. So if you're listening and you're interested in learning more, then feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or we can leave a link below.
Well, that leads in nicely, because I think you've shared an awful lot of information today that has been extremely empowering, I think, for a lot of people, lots of thoughts here. So how do people keep an eye on what you're up to? What's the channels, the websites? Where should they go and search for you?
Yeah, I think probably the best thing, obviously, I've got the Game Changers Experience podcast, which you've mentioned at the very beginning. It's a top 2.5% global ranked show. So you're welcome to listen into any of those. We tend to write regular newsletters on LinkedIn. So if you're interested and you're more of a reader or bookworm, feel free to check that out. And you mentioned books and so forth. The other thing I was going to say to you is probably the best thing to do is to connect with me on LinkedIn. Send a personal message, mention the podcast here, and then I can kind of put two and two together. I get so many requests. So if you leave me a personal note, and you mention this podcast, then I'll probably respond much quicker than I would normally. But I appreciate the call. Appreciate the question.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I think on LinkedIn, you're under Adam I Strong. Is that correct? Or
yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. I'll give you one more question, because I know the time's running out now. I'm quite interested to hear what you think about this. At the moment, are seeing that actually quite a lot of businesses are actually doing quite well. Their order books are good, and they've got quite a bit of backlog actually trying to catch up and deliver to customers, which is a nice place to be. Let's not doubt that. But that can breed sometimes some complacency, where they just focus on getting stuff out the door, getting it to the customers, and they're forgetting that around the corner, maybe it's a significant downturn as well. So how do these businesses make sure they don't forget to secure their future growth in sales whilst they're experiencing a bit of a rush of an order book at the moment?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think, and interestingly enough, you mentioned about loyal customers that come back and potentially buy stuff or whatever it might be. Those are the clients that you really need to work on, right? Because, they already believe in you. They believe in your products or service. They believe about what you stand for, etc. So they're already sold, okay? And we all know, well, if you not know, it takes 10 times more energy and effort to acquire new clients than it does to nurture current ones. So the current question you need to ask yourself is, okay, great. Listen, if you're going through huge amounts of business growth, great. Congratulations. Well done. But hey, it can take a snap of the fingers, changing the market, whatever it might be. And then suddenly you could go from, 10, 20% growth to 10, 20% downturn, right? So I use them having the mindset of being a pessimistic optimist. So it means that basically, it's not that I'm negative, right? It just means that I'm anticipating that things could potentially go wrong. And then when the shit hits the fan, then effectively I'm already ready with my tools and resources and ready to rock and roll, so that actually it doesn't cause a massive disruptive, whether it be in the supply chain or whatever it might be. That's what I need to prepare myself for. So I think that's like super important, to make sure that you are prepared, you're adaptful, okay? And don't be afraid of experimentation. I'm a big fan of experimentation. What I mean by that is, don't be afraid of trying new things. I speak to so many leaders and founders and decision makers. They get complacent in the ways that they do things, whether it be to streamline processes or whatever it might be. And don't be complacent, right? Think of ways and you can try new things, right? So, for example, if you depend solely on a particular client or supply. Maybe you depend solely on Facebook ads or whatever it might be. Don't depend on technology or whatever it is. Make sure you've got a backup in place, and learn about that. It's your job to make sure that those things don't happen, and you're adaptable, and you make sure that you create this team essentially of happy clients and customers. It all goes back to the culture that you want to create and the vision that you want to create. So yeah, I hope that kind of helps.
Yeah, that's really good. I always suggest that continuous improvement should continue even when you're up against it. Keep investing in your people to make sure they've got the skills and competence, for when they need to do things in a different way. As you say, they haven't stopped learning, they haven't stopped challenging the way they're doing things. It's so easy to get yourself deep in the mud, so to speak, that you forget to look at other ways of doing things as well. So brilliant final thing to finish on. That's really good. Thank you very much for your time today, Adam. Most appreciated, full of energy and full of information. So I couldn't ask for more. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a great day.
Thanks, mate. Take care. So there's another Real Life Buyer podcast. I do hope you enjoyed it and it's given you some ideas and inspiration for greater action and achievement. If you are a purchasing or a supply chain professional, business owner or director, come and join my Facebook group, the Purchasing and Supply Chain Community Hub, a safe place to engage with like-minded, friendly people. See you soon. Bye.